afternoon, and welcome to this week's episode of Level Up Cyber. My name is Tony Bryan. I'm your host and Executive Director at CyberUp. This is going to be a fun one. I think it's a topic that is near and dear to a lot of companies and a lot of individuals' hearts, and I also think it's one of the things that we have a tendency to overlook and underestimate. It's a really simple thing that I think we take for granted. It's the concept of security awareness, right? We all know the things. We all know what to do. We know we don't click this and we don't click that, but do we really know and understand some of the risks and things that come along with it? So very excited today to have Tom Kirkham join us. Tom is the CEO of Kirkham IronTech and is really well-versed in helping companies and individuals with their security awareness training. So Tom, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for the kind words, Tony. And it's my pleasure being here.
I won't soapbox too much. If you've listened to the show for a little while, you've heard me ramble on about the idea of data care and the Gula Foundation and Ranasini Gula, founders of Tenable, and just their idea of data care and the concept of self-ownership of we are responsible for our own things, much like our own health, right? Like that concept resonates with me. So security awareness is such a critical part and foundational component to that aspect of somebody being more cyber conscious and cyber aware. So definitely excited to jump into it. So you and I have had a chance to get to know each other and learn all the incredible things about your career. But for the sake of everybody's benefit, I'd love to just introduce yourself, where you've come from and how you got to where you're at today. What is your origin story?
Oh, wow. Well, I went to college for economics, believe it or not, but basically, this company is it'll be 25 years old in January. And it started out as a typical IT service provider, and we did break fix business. And that's, if you hire out your IT, break fixes, you just pay them by the hour when something's broken, right? And then it was probably close to 15 years ago, we started getting into managed services, and we started seeing the security landscape changing. So then we changed into a managed security service provider, making security job one. That's kind of a difference between a typical managed services provider, which is basically you write a check every month and they make sure nothing breaks and everything's maximized for performance, productivity, and efficiency. But when these hackers really got really good at their stuff, and then the NSA was breached and their offensive cyber warfare tools like Stuxnet was stolen along with the source code, that changed the game. You know, a typical antivirus is no longer effective, off-the-shelf antivirus. Our clients do not use anything that can be bought at Best Buy or Office Depot. We're putting industrial strength security defensive tools in place.
Oh, wrong button. I like it. So, what sparked your interest in the idea of security awareness? And let's just, for the sake of everybody's benefit, let's define what is security awareness and, what is security awareness?
Well, security awareness is just being aware of what your risk is or your company's risk is. And it's very common for people to think that, well, why would someone want to hack me? I'm not wealthy. I don't own a company. I'm in the middle of nowhere. So I don't think it's going to happen to me. And the same thing with companies. You know, we talk to law firms and just all sorts of different types of businesses. And the smaller they are, the more likely they're going to think that, well, a hacker doesn't want to attack me. I don't really have to worry about it. That only happens to Sony Pictures Corporation or JBS Meat Supply, Colonial Pipeline a couple of years ago. That's because that's all they hear about. That's what's on CNN. But what they don't understand, what most people still don't understand, is the vast majority of these attacks are done at scale and volume. And the hacking industry is huge. Last year, it was over $8 trillion globally. It's so big that if it was a country, it would be the third largest GDP on the planet. United States, China, and then the hacking industry. And when you start realizing that there's tens of thousands of people that are attacking tens of thousands or even millions of people at a time, you start realizing that they're just playing a numbers game. They don't care if you've got money, but if they get on your computer and they encrypt all your data on your computer, but you've spent the last 20 years digitizing all of these family photos, and maybe they hold it ransom for $500, are you going to pay that? Are those photos that you spent so much time collecting worth that kind of money? They don't know who you are, and they don't even care who you are in these attacks. And in fact, they don't know who you are or care who you are after it's all over with. And if you pay the ransom, doesn't matter. There was one a global ransomware attack a couple of 3, maybe 4 years ago that netted $3.5 billion globally. And the two masterminds behind it netted $200 to $300 million each. And the rest of it went to the rest of the gangs that were involved. The other companies I'm telling you, it's mind-boggling. There are companies on the dark web that provide products and services to hackers. It's a huge industry. In fact, it's so big now, you go on the dark web and they complain about administration problems and HR problems, but they're just playing a numbers game. That's it. Yeah, conversion rates. They're thinking in terms of marketing terms. What's our conversion rate?
I think of that amount of money, first of all, is crazy. And I've always just heard that the underbelly of the system that does these things, right? Because these are professional hackers that are at scale that have made companies, and their entire purpose is to have people hack daily, right? And it is a numbers game, but just it blows my mind just to think of the scale of that, and it is alarming, and it does put a little bit of fear, right, and uncertainty, and at least as an individual, like, hey, what is all these things out? And I think most people are generally shocked at just the volume and how large these attacks are every single day. So we're going to divide this conversation into two kind of buckets, right? A company bucket and an individual bucket, but the core of it I think will tie back in the end will be about the same. So, why is this important for companies that are hiring people every single day, that are selling and making products or manufacturing things? They can't just go. Why can't they just go make widgets and do their business and hope that things work out for the best? But why do they have to invest in things like this to increase the awareness of their workforce?
Oh, well, because they're going to get caught. They're going to get hacked. They're going to have customers compromised. They're going to have systems shut down. It's going to cost them money no matter what happens. But here's what the research also tells us, and it depends on the research study, but up to 60% of businesses go out of business within 2 years of a significant security event. That's it. That's what the numbers are. And sometimes it's as little as 6 months. So, excuse me. So if you imagine all the attorneys that you work with, or your banker, your financial advisor, your doctor, your dentist, all those personal financial and health records and all of that, if they get compromised, those types of businesses thrive on their reputation. So at the very core of it, a business has to think about their reputation. What would happen in the case of a security event? And there's rules and regulations that require them to report it in most states, and it's going to be public knowledge. And so if you do nothing more than just cut that risk to your company down, that's your job as the owner or the CEO or the president. That's what your job is to analyze risk. And when you comprehend that, you realize that, well, I can't afford this. I mean, we can't afford to be breached. It's just the cost of doing business. It's not rolling the dice. And what my company specializes in is dropping, let's say their risk is 10% in any given year and having a breach, we drop it down to 0.01 or 0.001%. There's no such thing as 100% protection. But the important thing to that we have a problem with our own clients, and that's around the security awareness and security training. And it's when you understand that well over 90% of security events are due to human failure. The ransomware attack, it's typically an email attack. That's just a con job. It'll appear like it's coming from a vendor that, if you're in the law business, it's going to be one of the research firms, so somebody in bookkeeping just gets an email that says, attached are all the outstanding invoices for your account. Please pay immediately or we're turning the service off. And bookkeeping's just trying to get their job done. And they click on the Excel spreadsheet. Excel spreadsheet calls a macro. The macro calls the Windows disk encryption service and starts encrypting everything it can find on the entire network. And so it needs to be top of mind, and that's what continuous cybersecurity awareness training does. And then we also usually tie in phishing sims or phishing simulations to where we're constantly testing our clients and their people and our people. And it doesn't matter how smart you think you are, you can be fooled by these emails. The days of misspelled words, bad grammar, broken English, bad graphics, those are over. They're so rare to see anymore that sometimes we'll pass them around the office just for a laugh. No, and in fact, we simulate a phishing attack on ourselves, right? So we get 1 or 2 emails a week that no one, even the people that set it up, really just don't know what the email is. So, and there's only been one person in the company that's never been fooled, and it ain't me. I just so happened to be working on Google security settings one time, and that's when the phishing sim came out. Hey, we see you've changed your Google security settings. Click here to review them. I mean, it was right at the same time, coincidentally. And I clicked on it, and I got a 2-minute video on everything that I did wrong. I completely blew past all the things that I know, the SLAM method, where here's what you look for, or, if it had been out of sync, if I hadn't been working on those, I probably wouldn't have fallen for it. But it just goes to illustrate, especially now in the day of AI generated emails, they can identify the hierarchy or the organization chart inside of a business. And bookkeeping could get a business or an email from somebody that is like this. This happened to a friend of mine. He owns an insurance company. It looked like it was from him, and it was an email that says, please wire $50,000 to this city account in New York. And it wasn't unusual for that company to move $50,000 around, but it got trapped. They had policies in place, accounting controls to trap it, but it could have easily not been caught, and that money would have vaporized.
We just alluded to it a little bit. The next question is, what kind of information are threat actors trying to accomplish or get from these companies, right? Or individuals, right? And we'll lead into people next. But what is it they're looking for? Is it trade secrets, sales? Like, what is it they're trying when they are trying to poke and prod and find things or do these phishing campaigns? What is the information they're trying to get from companies?
That's a great question. It depends on what the threat actor objectives are. Now, the majority of hacks are for money. But the interesting thing is, on a modern ransomware attack, is they'll also deliver other bad stuff, malware, viruses, or whatever on the computers. And then when their ransomware attack is over, they go out on the dark web and sell a list of servers that they've installed backdoors on. or a list of workstations that they've installed keyloggers, which is used for credential theft. So other specialists in the hacking industry will take that list for whatever amount of money, $100 or $50, whatever it is. They'll buy that list, and then they will hack according to their objectives. Now, when you start talking other than money, what are the objectives? Well, when you're looking at nation state, we're seeing it right now, and we've been seeing it for 10 years, but it's finally getting mainstream attention. But it's being used like China, Russia, especially, and Iran is using hacking and personal information and social media to influence our society and political and elections and the makeup of our government. And it's happening on both sides. This is not a political discussion at all. Just be aware that you're being manipulated by foreign interest, and their objective is to create, those countries' objective is to create chaos in Western democracies. They don't really care. They just want more and more tribalism that we're seeing in society these days. In the case of China, for the past 30 years, maybe longer, one of their big objectives is to steal intellectual property. And if you think back 30 years, China was more or less a third world country. And now some of the cities in China are far more advanced than the most advanced American or European city. And you can't make that change in society that fast without getting intellectual property and patented things and techniques and all of these things to move that fast. There's some historians that say that theft of intellectual property that China did over the past few decades is the greatest transfer of wealth in human history. And then you've got nation states doing it for cyber war. So pretty much everybody listening is familiar with them wanting to attack critical infrastructure. There's a list of 17, but water, utilities, electric, gas, supply chains, and all of these different things. So that's more chaos, but it's also war. That's a war. It's a battle. It's not kinetic warfare. It's cyber warfare. So there's some of that going on. There's some hacker or threat actors that do it for doxing or ideological reasons. If you look at what the group Anonymous has done off and on over the years, they had an ideological purpose for hacking this particular company. Edward Snowden, I can't remember the name of the deal down in Panama about all this high net worth individual money that was moving around. Those documents were all stolen and publicized. So it depends on what their objectives. And there are many, many, many objectives. But once they get into the system, no matter what, if that's not their specialty, the specialists that specialize in doxing or stealing intellectual property or any of the other objectives, they're going to find out. They share all that information with each other. They understand. You imagine all the specialties there are under the roof of a good-sized hospital, MD Anderson, Cleveland Clinic, Mayo, whatever. There's that type of specialization in the entire hacking industry, and they hang out together.
I know it's a tight group, and I'm glad you alluded to the intellectual property. I know I've seen a couple talks where you just see Chinese airplanes that look identical to the U.S. airplanes. It's a ABC plane, but they call it an ABD plane, and it's all the same stuff. And it's billions of dollars of research and R&D and stuff put into these things, and it's easy to exponentially get ahead of your peers if you're taking their stuff and doing it. So great answer, and a really solid example of just what all is at risk. Transitioning to the human side, or it's all human, but to the individual side, what do the bad folks want from me, right? I'm just a person living in my house trying to raise my kids and pay bills. I don't have a whole lot going on with me. Like, what do they want from me?
That's a great question, and it's really I've got the 2 books on Amazon, and the Hack the Rich book. It's about the special needs of high net worth individuals, and I wrote that before AI was being used by the hackers to where they could automate targeted attacks. So that gets you what you want to know there as an individual. So that book is more appropriate for anyone in things on how better to protect yourself. Numbers, the research tells us that 90% of the population reuses passwords. Even though 60% know they shouldn't, they still do it. So why is that a security risk? Well, number one, it's probably not secure in and of itself, right? It's your dog's name and the birth year or the birth date of your firstborn, or it's your college mascot 123. And all of that can be scraped and gathered off of Facebook and LinkedIn and different places, and they just automate trying out passwords. And then once they get into something, they get a successful match. If you've reused that same password everywhere else and say your email gets well, first of all, if your email gets compromised, they pretty much got keys to the kingdom. So because what's the most common way to reset password? It's through email still. But if you use the same password on your email as you do your Facebook, and when Facebook gets compromised again, that password will be stolen. It'll be on the dark web in minutes. Hundreds of millions of records are on, if not billions of records are on the dark web. But if you're using that same password on your Chase account, your Citi account, your Merrill Lynch account, your online medical account, all of them are compromised by using the same password. That is a huge no-no. And what
I have so many passwords to remember. It's hard. I don't. Everything requires a password and username. What can I use to keep it all straight? Are there tools and things that I could use and leverage? Because inherently, we're all humans. We're a little lazy. Let's be honest. I can't say that I'm immune to that. But what are some tips and tricks for me to use to not be a target for those things or make myself vulnerable or easier target?
Right. So you're so kind to tee that ball up for me. So the answer is a password manager, of course, and it's a piece of software. If you'll just commit, they're all a little clunky. It's not the software's problem. It's usually around websites. But so since they're a little clunky sometimes on certain sites, people get frustrated. But if you'll commit just a couple of 3 days to using one, you'll keep using it. And then 30 days later, you'll wonder why you didn't start 30 years ago. So what a password manager does, it securely not only stores the password, but also transmits it to all your devices. So you've got it on your phone, your desktop, your laptop, your tablet, whatever. It's always with you. And it generates a password, and you can spin it up to 20, 25 characters, which is what I do all the time. Randomly generated, special characters, upper, lowercase numbers. And you don't care what the password is because it's always there. And in most cases, it's going to automatically fill in your credentials on the website. So, and it also looks for duplicates, like you're reusing passwords, but it also makes it unique for every login that you have. I think my password manager may have 1,500 to 2,000 records in it because I've been using one for 30 something years. And just to name a couple, I'm not compensated in any way really for these two companies, but 1Password is great. Keeper is also really good. I guess in a way I am compensated by Keeper because we're a partner with Keeper. But those are both really good password managers. What you should not do is use the password manager, so-called password manager, in your browser, unless it's Safari. Safari's okay, but you should not ever store credentials in Chrome. They've had breaches. You got to remember what is Google selling? They're selling you. You're the product with everything Google makes. So security is not really job one at Google. And the same thing applies to Facebook and other social media platforms that you're not paying for. But since Chrome has been compromised, quit storing it in browsers. Use a password manager. And I promise you, like I said, if you stick with it, you'll wonder how you ever lived without one. I haven't met anybody that said, I gave it 30 days and I can't do it. And I've never heard that from anybody that I've berated for not using a password manager.
So, we've got about 5 or so minutes left, and I definitely want to get to some advice and best practices, right? So we laid a solid foundation of what we're doing and why it's important to companies, individuals, but what do we do, right? I mean, obviously we just alluded to a password manager, but if I'm a company and an organization, where can I start to find some answers and some solutions to give me peace of mind at night? So I want to trust my employees, but I also want to empower them to learn the things. So where's a good place to begin?
Well, I personally, I think it's make it top of mind. You go into any decent sized city or small town for that matter, it doesn't matter. Pretty much everyone's been exposed to one-on-one street cons, right? If you're in New Orleans, I know you've been exposed to them there because they can tell you where you got your shoes, right? That con's been going on for decades now. You've just got to be understanding that you don't want to react to an email just because it's urgent. You want to take a moment and say, does this sound like something? Say it looked like it came from me. Does this sound like something Tom would say? Or does this sound like something he would request? In the case of that $50,000 email that my friend company was tested with, after they read it, or somebody else laid some eyes on it, they go, he wouldn't say it like that. There would be more to it. And you can't get there as a company unless you make it top of mind. Security has to be job one. So you got to think in terms of a con job as most likely way you're going to get breached, personally, a business, anything. And if you do nothing but just get some cybersecurity awareness training, we have probably hundreds of videos on YouTube around different types of hacks and what to do and how to secure yourself. They're all available for free. And if you have a company, if you're the head honcho, if you are where the buck stops, especially if you've got investors or stockholders to answer to, you better have answers and you better understand the risk you're taking by not making security job one. I was recently hired by a really good sized company, global manufacturing company, and they had personnel that repeatedly were failing their simulated phishing email attacks, right? It's something you should implement. And my approach hopefully made a difference. They had never tried what I was talking about, and that's to make security job one. You've got to make it top of mind, and that'll make them better employees, better for the company, and better for them in their personal life as well. It's just really getting a fine appreciation for that that sheer size and scale of the industry. So if you, going by numbers again, if you implement a continuous cybersecurity awareness training in your company, you're going to cut your risk in half. All of these cool, super industrial Fortune 100 level defensive tools that my company and others deploy, we wouldn't have to do that. And we'd still do it, but we really have it there because we know humans are going to fail. That's why we have to have them.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, and it is what it is. But we incorporating what I would consider a culture of security, speaking about it, any opportunity with all hands, just making that a consistent theme that you're talking about on the regular is huge. I know we kicked tires early on in our existence about just creating cyber aware people and finding ways through security awareness training to get people certified, right? Everybody likes their certificates and their hours and completion to feel like they're part of something. So that was always kind of been top of mind for me. And then I think the other piece that we've started to do is just having those conversations earlier, right? We're putting iPads and iPhones in the hands of toddlers right now that have access to the world that could, with a wrong click, spend a lot of money on an iTunes account or buy something, right? So, there's a lot of risk that comes along with it. So we found that the earlier you start having these conversations with students around the importance of protecting yourself and how you own your own data, like really getting that in. Because to your point, and I think you just confirmed in my mind, this doesn't go anywhere for the foreseeable future. This is a new norm that we have to reset our expectations and just get into a mindset of being security first and thinking about that on a regular basis. So, but earlier you get in with young students and start having these conversations, you're inspiring them one to just be better stewards of their own data and stewards of company data, and two, maybe helping people grow into the field and sector and push them towards a career, which we've seen all the data, we know that's an important part. So Tom, man, that was some great content. Everybody gets the same last question though, so I'd be remiss not to ask you. So what advice would you give to somebody looking to level up their cybersecurity career?
That's a great question. I think it would be very beneficial to look at all the different specialties. Just like the specialist on the black hat side, there's specialists on the white hat side, there's specialists in the gray hat area. Look inside there, because being a cybersecurity whatever, that's a generic term, and if you deep dive into it, you may find that you're just really enthralled with being incident response, or being part of blue team red team stuff, or somebody like me, a generalist that evangelizes cybersecurity. I think different companies look for different things when they hire people. This comes up almost every day with me. Because of the nature of our business, and we don't really have time to go into it a whole lot here, but we weigh people with security credentials, certifications higher than we do college degrees, because the industry just changes way too fast. So that brings in another point, is maintain lifelong learning. You can't be you're not going to be dedicated to cybersecurity if you don't read threat intelligence reports, look at new threat techniques and technology, new con jobs. You got to stay up to date with the criminals and what the FBI calls them, tools, tactics, and procedures. What's their method of operation? How do they go about doing their craft? And if you're not sure about that, I think you'll find your way, because it is a very big industry. And those are the two things that I would point out. If you want to go to work for a Fortune 500, get that college degree, but those certifications are going to be super, super important. And the farther you go up that ladder of certifications, the more money you're worth.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I like the always a lifelong learner, because all too often I've met a lot of folks, they do the thing to get the thing, and they're like, I'm good, I don't have to worry about this. But I think cyber is such an expansive sector and industry with so many different verticals and pathways you can pick. You have to always be learning and finding what your passion is and continue to push. You found yours early, which is awesome to hear. So it's awesome.
Yeah, you think about the pace of change in just information technology. You got Moore's law, CPUs double in speed every 18 months. We'll add warfare to that technological pace of change. Think about how World War II, the technology just changed so much in 4 years. Well, that's how fast it changes in cybersecurity. There is no static you know, if you're truly good and passionate about it, you will maintain learning. But there's not many industries left that you can't keep learning. So
yeah,
those are falling off.
Well, Tom, I appreciate you joining us today. Quick plug. So Tom's got 2 best-selling books that are out there. One is called Hack the Rich. It's, we tie it into what we talked about today, is that what is that personal ownership that you need to do as an individual, right? For, kind of focus towards a high net worth person, but I imagine there are best practices that are applicable to everybody. We all aspire to be high net worth. So why not get ahead of the power curve? You're there, right? So go pick that one up. And I'm going to have to pick up the Cyber Pandemic Survival Guide. It scares me a little bit off the title. And, sometimes 9 years ago, I got into this space and learned quickly that a little bit like Wizard of Oz, what you see behind the curtain, it's a little scary. So, those things, there's ignorance is bliss in some of these regards around understanding all the tactics, procedures you alluded to a second ago. So both those would be great reads. So Tom, thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to check out the book. And if you got any questions, I'm sure people can feel free to reach out to you on LinkedIn if you got questions and go. So thank you so much, Tom.
It's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and everybody, please stay vigilant. Make it top of mind.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope see everybody soon. Thanks a lot.